So a word that's thrown around a lot is this word love. You have a bunch of romantic movies with all their I love you cliches, and you have a bunch of artists singing about their love lives and how they're so great until they break up and they start singing about how love stinks. We love our parents, siblings, cousins, family, friends, husband, wife, boyfriend, or girlfriend, or maybe you're not there yet. Maybe they're just that special someone. I feel like we can have this picture of love in our heads, and it's typically reflected through our romantic attractions. Like, do you remember that one person you really liked, your crush? That one person who you were crazy for? Maybe you had them in the same class, or you worked together, or your friend introduced you, or you fancied them from afar, and you saw their eyes, their shiny hair, their smile, and you thought, oh my goodness. They consumed your thoughts, and all of a sudden you thought, I love him or her. And with all these pictures of love, one danger is that we can lose sight of what love really is. So that's what we're gonna be talking about in today's video. Do you know what love is? Now, taking a step back, is love that feeling you get when you're attracted to someone? Is it that butterfly in the stomach tingly sensation that causes you to lose your appetite and distract you to the point where you can only think of your beloved? Well, I would argue that this isn't all that love encompasses, because love is so much more than a feeling. So how do we know love? And how does God illustrate to us what love is? Now, I want you to think about the life of Jesus. Early on in Jesus' ministry, he picked 12 disciples, and he took care of them, and he took the time to teach them and to explain who God was and how to live a more godly life. So they traveled together, going around Galilee to Capernaum, up and down the Jordan River and to Jerusalem. And in their travels, Jesus was constantly surrounded by tons of people who needed healing. So Jesus' schedule was filled to the brim with healing the blind, deaf, lame, sick, lepers, the mute, and the demon-possessed. Jesus would also visit synagogues, teaching the masses about the kingdom of heaven. And so for 3 whole years, Jesus helped and took care of his 12 disciples and healed and taught thousands of people. And this just shows the heart of Jesus. He communicated his love to people by spending time with them, pointing them in the right direction, and being the help that they needed. But most importantly of all, the act that defined Jesus' love the most was his death on the cross. 1 John 3:16, by this we know love, because he laid down his life for us, and we also ought to lay our lives down for the brethren. In other words, love is putting others' needs above our own needs. It's putting someone else before you, because that's exactly what Jesus did on the cross. Dying that day was painful. Soldiers beat up Jesus to the point where you couldn't recognize him. His back was torn open by whips made with broken glass, metal, and bone. And after all these things, they put a crown of thorns on him and nailed him to a cross. He did all these things because he knew that he needed to die in order to save us from the punishment of our sins and to save us from going to hell, so that by faith we can go to heaven when we die. Jesus put our own well-being before his own because that's what love is. So when you say you love your family, your boyfriend or girlfriend, or your friends, do you just say you love them or do you act like it too? Because love is more than just a word. It's more than just a feeling. Love is an action. It's something you do. And love sometimes looks like washing the dishes or doing chores or making money so that you can pay bills to provide for your loved ones. Sometimes it looks like not complaining, and sometimes it looks like lending a hand or listening to them vent even though you had a long day. And sometimes it looks like forgiving them and being patient even though they messed up. Love puts the other person first. That's why love is willing to sacrifice, because the well-being of the other person is more important to them than their own well-being. So before we say we love someone, let's take some time and think, do we really love them? Because if we do love them, then like Jesus, we should probably act like it. 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So,
good morning, all you Ewoks. Glad to have you with us. It's going to be a little different this morning than normally. Normally, Kayla would be up here playing, but Abby's not feeling really well, and Kayla's going to stay with her. So we need you to pray. Need you to pray for Mama and pray for Abby, and they'll take her to the doctor and find out what's the matter with her tomorrow. So today, just keep them in prayer, and we're just trusting God for, we just know God's in control of everything. So I'm going into preaching quickly, and just hope you had a good week. Hope everything went okay with you in your isolation time. And I was, thinking about everybody staying in, and I've always, my mom raised birds. We raised all kinds of birds. I've had homing pigeons. I've raised all kinds of wild game, pheasants, quail. As a kid, I just raised all that, and I've always had a bird in a cage. I never thought about a bird in a cage, that all we let them do was jump from one stick to the other, and they were created to fly. And I've never saw the confinement of a cage. It was kind of like, well, what else do you need? You've got food, you got water, you got me, I love you. What could you do? And yet I never dreamed that God didn't create that bird to sit in the cage so I could look at it every so often. They were created to fly. And I thought, well, it's okay for us to stay at home, but I don't think God created us just to stay in four walls. And I'm sure that, there are some people that staying home is fine with them. I am not one of them. I've already put drywall up on my garage. I've not only texturized the walls, I painted the walls, and I thought I need to have more space, so I built some space. I didn't like the ceiling, so I put in a drop ceiling. I'm already now YouTubing how to paint the floor of my garage, so I'm bored. And in fact, I'm so bored, right after service I may mow the lawn. I don't know what I'm going to do. But definitely wasn't created, nor were many of us created to just sit in our four walls and enjoy that. I guess if you like that stuff, that's you're having a good old time. But probably most of us we're ready to break out and to get going. So I sympathize with you, and we'll get going. So, but let's keep Abigail in prayer, and Mama Kayla, keep her in prayer, that God will give her wisdom, and we can find out what's happening here. So I want to talk to you this morning about the attitude of having little. We've all dreamed about what we would do if we won the lottery. And people said, well, I would donate. No one's taken me up on this challenge. No one. If on the lottery, everybody says, I'll pay my tithes. I'm going to give half to God, half to the church. All the things we're going to do for the kingdom of God. I have put this challenge out, and I have yet to this day had anybody bring to the church numbers to win the lottery. I tell them, go out and buy your lottery tickets and give it to the church. Put the ticket in the offering plate, and we'll check it Wednesday, or we'll check it whenever it is, so we can win, and all of it can go to God. Nobody's given me that yet. Hopefully we'll get some. And I think the reason why we don't is, what if the church gets it all? Oh, no. I need it. I'll tell you what. You put the lottery ticket in the church, and if the church wins, we'll pay you tithe. And see if we can get any takers on that. Kind of like, see how you like living on 10%. And half the and we may or may not give it. I don't know. It depends on how I feel. If I like you, I may give it to you. If not, well, I may spend it on something else. I saw a meme on Facebook, and maybe you saw it. Maybe one of you sent it to me. The meme was, I was walking through the parking lot, and that's how the meme goes. I was walking through the parking lot, and I found a $20 bill. It says I held the $20 bill up, and I said, what would Jesus do? And then the caption is, he'd turn it into wine, so I did. So, I've already checked our parking lot. Nothing out there for me to turn into wine yet. But if we won the lottery, if we, did all these things, if we won a lot of money, if I had a rich relative that died, and boy, that it'd sure be great if I had a rich relative, but that's not something I'm banking on retiring on. But I want to talk to you this morning about our attitude of having little. The Bible says those that compare themselves with others, the Bible calls it unwise. That word unwise really means stupid. Don't be stupid and compare yourselves with other people. Two things will happen if you compare your life with other lives, with other people. You'll either be on the short end, or you'll get arrogant and think, I've got more than anybody, or I don't have as much. Normally, we go to the I don't have as much, and so we tend to put ourselves down. I had a cousin that his philosophy in life in playing any type of game is, well, someone's got to lose, and it might as well be me. And my philosophy is somebody's got to win. Too bad you got to lose. And so it's my philosophy is it's not how you play the game; it's whether you win or lose that counts. But I want to talk about our attitude of having little. In fact, our audience has gone up by one, and up by two. Our church has grown by 50% already, and we've got our sound group, and Emmanuel is back here, just a fresh face in our church, and I got Joyce and Chad with me today, and I did a wedding yesterday, and Yeah, I was within 6 feet of people, so may have to go back into quarantine for another 6 hours. But had a good time. Married Jessica, knew Jessica when she was just a little baby, and well, in fact, before she was a little baby. But anyway, attitude of not having enough. And I want to read from Ecclesiastes. This is the key. I'm going to talk to you about 3 people in the Bible, and I want to talk to you about 3 things in the Bible. I want to talk to you about a stick, a not much, and those that stayed with the stuff. The key to what I'm preaching about today is how do we deal with little? How do you work with God when you feel you have so little to offer Him? Well, we'll deal with that key in a minute. But Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. And here's what it says. This is the key to what I'm going to preach about. Whatever your hands find to do, do with all your might. For there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. It says, I want you to, Ecclesiastes, smartest man, Solomon wrote it, and he said, if you're going to do something, you better do it. Because when you die, you can't do it. And a lot of people, it's always, well, someday, someday I want to work for God, or someday I want to do this, someday I want to do that. And, in fact, we call it bucket lists. And the older we get, the more we want to, before I die, I want to do this. Before I die, I want to accomplish this in my life, or I want to go here or see that. And the wisest man that God ever made said, well, if you're going to do it, you better do it. And if you do it with all your might. Don't just put a half-hearted effort into it. Do it with everything you've got. And that's what the key that we're talking about. But I want to talk about attitude of having little. And that if our philosophy is, I don't have much to offer God, then we tend to shrink away from doing the things that God wants us to do because we figure I don't have much to offer. Well, I want to get into, first of all, a stick and what God can do with a stick. Everybody can find a stick. Just walk outside and go to a tree and get you a stick. But in the book of Exodus, chapter 4, God's people are in bondage. And Moses, this is dealing with Moses. And Moses is a reluctant leader. He really doesn't want to lead. He really doesn't want to do anything, for God, because he kind of feels that he doesn't have much to offer. Sounds like a lot of people in church. God says, I want you to do something. And like, hey, I don't have much. I can't do this. And we start comparing ourselves with other people who we view as, more talented than we are. And I believe, I heard, I'm not sure if Kobe Bryant made this, coined the phrase, but he certainly lived by it. He said, it's not that I'm more talented than anyone. He said, I just decided to pay the price. And the difference between greatness is not ability, but it's determination. That getting up early in the morning, shooting 1,000 free throws a day. I follow golf kind of extensively, and some of the best putters, on the golf tour. The reason they're good is because they're not going to quit putting until they make 100 3-foot putts in a row. And when they make 100 3-foot putts in a row, then they'll go on to something else. And 300, I know people that don't want to even practice. And that's, and people that, don't want to get out and pay the price are people that usually end up just talking about what they want to do. Well, God came to Moses, and he said, Moses, my people are in bondage. I want you to go deliver them. I need you to deliver my people. Somebody needs you today. Somebody needs a word from you. Somebody needs something that you have. And if you keep it to yourself and are constantly disqualifying yourself because you don't have the abilities compared to someone else that you compare yourself with, you're not going to do it. And so there's people out there waiting for you to just start using what God gave you. And so Moses, if you read the story, he just starts making excuses why he can't do this. And finally, God goes, Moses, what's in your hand? And of course, him being a shepherd, he goes, my staff. And staff was it's, you always hear it, it had a hook on it, and they'd reach down and they would hook a lamb by the horns, or a sheep by the horns, or if they're in a pit, reach down and grab them and hook them. I also know that staff was made to whop them upside the head. That if they got out of the line and they were within reach, they'd wham, reach out and click them upside the ear, get their attention. And so Moses had the staff. Well, so did every other shepherd. Everybody had a staff. We'd call it a walking stick now. Joyce and I, we like to go hiking, and we're not mountain climbers. I'm talking about a flat level road, pavement, no bumps. And I've got my 2 walking sticks, and I walk. And we learned to use walking sticks when we forged one day in Hawaii, we forged up this river that was just flowing out of the mountain. It was probably 6 foot wide and 6 inches deep. This huge Colorado River flowing in. Anyway, Joyce tripped and broke her finger, and it's kind of amazing to hear your wife go, "Oh!" and you turn around and she's floating in 6 inches of water. And so we use, it's a long story. So we use walking sticks. Well, people use walking sticks. So it was nothing unusual. It was just ordinary. And God said to Moses, now remember, I'm talking about the attitude of having little. And so God turned to Moses. He says, what do you got? He says, well, I've got this stick. God says, God started telling him what he could do with that stick, or what God could do with it. Now, it wasn't much. It wasn't ordinary. Wasn't some golden stick with, jewel encrusted, rod that he walked around with. And it wasn't to anyone else. It was just every other shepherd, stick their stick in the ground and rest. So nothing unusual about it. But God said, what do you have in your hand? He says, I got this rod. Now, I believe God's going to ask some of you some questions today, and you need to be ready to answer them. What do you got in your life that you feel is of any use to God. Well, Moses had this rod, and he didn't think it was you know that important. And God began to say, hey, we know that it became a very important tool in the hand of God. And so he said, well, I want you to take that rod. And then he begins, you can read the story, and begins to tell him how to use this rod and what God could do it. He says, I'm going to take that stick and I'm going to deliver over 2 million people. That's going to be my sign to you that I'm with you. And it's just a stick. It has no, money value or anything. And as you read the story, here's why Moses began to do miracles. Was it went from Moses' stick, and God said, let me use it. I'll show you what I can do with it. And in verse 20, it's never called again. It was always called Moses' staff. But after Moses gave it to God and said, here, God, you take it, it became the rod of God. In fact, God refers to it that way. He said, you gave it to me. Now, I'm not giving it back. But I want you to take not your staff, but I want you to take my rod, and I want you to go down, and he begins to instruct him how he's going to deliver the people of Israel. And so all Moses had was a stick. But God said, let me use it. Give it to me. We'll come back to that. Another person in the Bible who didn't have much to offer. And this is in the story of Elijah, 1 Kings chapter 17. And there's a drought in the land. They don't have any toilet paper. And they're running out of everything. He's running out of water. He's running out of all kinds of stuff to give, to sustain on. So God tells Moses, I want you to get up, or told Elijah, I want you to get up and go. And he says, I got a place I want you to be. And so when, it's good to see David and Amelia, our church is growing as I'm preaching. I love the kingdom of God. Now, Elijah has to get up, and he says, I got a place I want you to be. So he sends Elijah to this widow woman. Now, when Elijah gets there, Elijah's hungry. I kind of thought, man, this guy's, he's sure selfish. That's the way I viewed it. I'll take all you have. And so he goes to this, the widow woman, and he says, I need a drink. I'm thirsty. Can you draw me some water? And that was a custom in those days. And so she did. She gave him some water. And he also said, hey, I'm hungry. And he says, what do you, can you feed me? She goes, I only have a handful of meal and a little bit of oil. I'm going to make my son and I some bread, and we're going to die. Now, Elijah, if I'd have been Elijah, I'd have gone, oh, no. You guys eat it and die. I'm dying anyway, so we'll all three go together. But, at least you two be full. I don't want to take your last bit. You ever go to a dinner and there's one shrimp left in the plate? And and everybody's eyeing that shrimp or that French fry or whatever that, appetizer is. And no one wants to be the one to get it, Oh, no, I'm full. I love shrimp. And I always lie through my teeth. Bob, you want that last shrimp? Oh, no, I've got a meal coming. And really, I want to go, yeah! And I guess that's the Elijah spirit in me. And so she says, all I've got is a little bit of, I got a handful of meal and a little bit of oil, enough to mix it, and then we're gonna make our last meal, and we're gonna die. Elijah goes, I'll take it. You know, I want to say, what? You know, I go, you selfish guy. You'll take their last piece. But she offers it to him. Now, she had little. I'm talking about the attitude of feeling like you have little. And so she does it. I just said, hey, I'm sorry. I've only got enough for me and my kid, and you are going to die. But she goes, okay. So she makes it for him. She had little. Now remember, Moses has got a stick. It goes from a stick to the rod of God that's going to deliver people. She's only got a little meal, enough to just make one little, slice of bread. And Elijah says, give it to me. So she gives it to him. The attitude about having little is usually the little, the smaller amount we have, the more selfish we become with it. I don't have much, and I can't afford to give. I don't know how many people have said, I don't have that much to give anyway. And, I can't give to the kingdom of God. But, we've got, especially in Southern California, we would rather, if we don't have enough money, and this is sad, we would rather spend it on ourselves than give it to God, or make sure He could use it. And so we buy things that, I don't have enough, and so I better keep what I've got, or use it on myself, because I don't know when I'm going to get another one. That's the attitude about having a little. But she doesn't think that. She takes it and she says, here. And I don't know, it doesn't say this in so many words, but they sat there, and I believe Elijah says, well, now fix yourself something. I'm sorry, but I gave you my last. And she goes back to the wherever she kept her meal, and the little urn that she kept her oil in, and she said, wait a minute, I thought I used it all. And she makes that, and she says, I knew I poured the last drop of oil to make you a piece of bread. And all of a sudden the oil came out again. The Bible's very specific. Little meal, a handful of meal, and a little oil lasted them throughout the remainder of that drought. The Bible says that as long as that drought existed, and as long as they were in a problem, and as long as they were in that situation, God said, because you gave it to me, I'll meet your need. I wonder how many of us go without because we can't trust God to multiply it. That's what He's in. He's always, His math is adding and multiplying. The devil is take away and division. And God always wants to multiply. Now, this last person I want to deal with about attitude of having little, and this isn't about an attitude of having little, but it is about having an attitude of thinking what you do doesn't count. Now I want to talk about David. And in 1 Samuel chapter 30, there's a story about David, and he's going to war. Now, the background of this is they had lost everything. An enemy came in. You can read the story later. You'll probably have plenty of time this week. Anyway, and they come in and stole everything they had. Took their wife, their children, their goats. They took everything, sheep, animals, and the enemy left. David come back, and, boy, they were upset. And the people of Israel were upset with David. David said, God told David, I want you to go after him. I want you to go get back your stuff. So he took 600 guys with him. And so as they took these 600 guys, you've always got equipment you have to take. And you take 600 people, you've got to pack food, you've got to have animals to carry the food. It's just not like, we see on, some movie about Roman Empire where they're all marching with, they had to pack everything. They had to get their supplies because they're going to war. They got 600 men that they got to supply. They got to have water. They got to have food. They got to have extra weapons. And so they have this caravan that's with them. And so they go marching out. And they come upon the enemy. It was a long march. In fact, it was so long, it had pooped out 200 of them. And they just said, we can't go into war. And so David took 400, and they went into battle. And they won the battle, got back everything. And how countries back then and nations got rich is you took over another nation, and whatever that nation had, that was yours. And you got to keep it. So they took all the gold. Remember, they robed into this when they come in and pillaged Jerusalem back in 70 A.D., and they took all the gold. They melted the gold out of the walls. They took it for themselves. Well, that's what they did. And so the guys were coming back from the victory with David, and they're just shouting, and they're, look what we got. We got our wives, our kids. We delivered everybody. And there are people back home that are waiting, for them, and they're excited. But these guys are walking back, and they've got all of this stuff that they stole, they took back what the enemy stole from them. And then they stole from them and Israel and brought it in. So they're coming in, they're dragging, gunny sacks full of gold, and, they're herding the sheep, and it tells everything they did. And when they got there, these guys got selfish, and they go, there's 200 of them sitting there. And they didn't go to war because they had got tired, through the journey, and these guys that had won it didn't want to give anything to them. He wanted to keep it all to themselves. And David made I think this is one of the most important and unique stories in the Word of God about being used. And here's what David told these warriors. He said, you couldn't have gone out and fought the battle that you fought if they hadn't stayed with your stuff. And David said, the reason we were able to go out and participate wasn't because you were so strong and so talented and that you had all kinds of ability, but you were able to go out there and fight knowing that everything you had left behind wasn't going to get stolen again, wasn't going to get pillaged by another nation. These guys stayed with the stuff and protected it, so you had free mental capacity to go out and fight. And he says, those that stayed with the stuff get equal as you get. And so those that didn't even go out to battle, they still received the reward of the victor. This story, reminds me, and I know I'm preaching to basically an empty church this morning, but I would tell this story. Yeah, I'm not that. Well, I've got people in the back, but they're empty-minded. Is Josh awake? Okay, good. All right, Josh is yelling. I can't see because of the lights. And I know Daniel is. He says stuff. But so if they were here, in fact, I never read this story and think about it, that I don't think of Joe Ramos. Now, I was with him, had the privilege of marrying Jessica, their daughter, to yesterday, and we had a good time, good fellowship. Yes, I hugged people. I didn't give them elbows. I love you. I don't want your elbow. I want to hug your shoulders. And Joe's got other responsibilities, but today we have some things. We got down here early today, working with the sound system. Emmanuel is the gentleman I was telling you about. He's down here, so we were working on it. So we had to get down here early. Well, Joyce and Chad haven't been coming to church with us. So I've been coming down by myself. And I thought about, well, here we coming to church. And this is what I'm thinking. But I don't have Joe. And Joe has, Chad and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure someone else would have filled in. I hope so, but Joe has done this. And, some of you don't know, but Joe's the head usher in our church, and I can look back there like any pastor, and, you know where faces are, and Joe's back there. But Joe has, on his own, and has done it for years. When Chad has to go to the bathroom, whether he has to, do his sit downs or whatever it is, it takes to go to the bathroom, Joe does it. And Joe he's been basically untrained in that, but he's done it for so long that all of a sudden, Chad, we're bringing Chad today, and I thought, Joe's not here. And Joyce can't take Chad to the bathrooms, at when he has to do certain things. And I thought, oh my goodness, if Chad had to go to the restroom, Joe's not here, and and you never know when the call of nature's gonna hit you. I thought, I'm going to have to get down in the middle of my sermon and take Chad. If you've ever been here, you'll hear Chad say this to me. And this is him, and this is our key word. When Chad says, Dad, I need you, I'm going to stop everything I'm doing at that point. And this is to save me. I don't mean to embarrass him, but that he's telling me he has to go to the bathroom. Now, if Joe hears that, Joe says, I got it. And so let me tell you about people that stay with the stuff. Here my worry today was, oh man, if Chad has to go to the bathroom, you're going to have about a 10-minute break here in sermons because no one else can do it. These other guys are busy with stuff, and I needed somebody to stay with the stuff. Now, it worked out different because of some situations today, but I'm able to preach, and I already thought about it. What am I going to do while I'm preaching and Chad goes, Dad, I need you? Well, as a good father, he's coming first, and so you're going to stare at a blank wall here for a few minutes. And Jenny does this when we have dinners here, and we have them at least once a month. Jenny has taken over feeding Chad. Well, that frees Joyce and I to go visit. And others of you have done this, but they specifically have kind of taken it up on themselves. It's a small thing, but it releases Joyce and me to go do whatever pastors do. And knowing Chad's going to get fed, knowing if nature calls, Chad's going to be taken care of, and I can stand up here and preach. Now, according to what David did, and this is what I want to tell everybody that maybe feels like, well, I don't do that much. It's just a little bit. But if it relieves the pressure off of people who are going into battle, the same victory that I win and that God will credit towards me in my preaching, in whatever we do, going out over the air, or happening in the midst of our congregation, people getting saved, whatever victories I win because I'm free to go out and do what I do, is going to be attributed to Joe. God just doesn't see Joe taking somebody to the bathroom. God sees Joe freeing me to operate in my ministry. And it's not like a pat on the back. It's God saying, when it comes time to passing out rewards, I'm not going to forget what you did for my servant. And the same victory that I'm giving my servant, the same reward that I'm giving those people that are going out and fighting, I'm giving to you that stay with the stuff. And you may think you're I'm just a Sunday school teacher, or I'm just a part-time. I just greet people. That's all I do in church. I really don't have much to offer. I gave you 3 examples of people that didn't have much to offer. One had a stick, and it went from a stick to the rod of God because they allowed God to use it. I preached this 1,000 years ago at a youth camp, and one young lady was in. I didn't preach this sermon, but I preached this thought on giving what you have to God. And she wrote back. Joyce will tell you, wrote back. I got it several months. Well, it's been now a while, but she wrote a letter saying, "I remember the sermon about the stick," and I just, it was really neat. And she goes, "In fact, I still have my stick. I handed out sticks to everybody." And she says, "I still have my stick that you handed out. And maybe you've got something that someone illustrated. And, in a sermon, we'll keep it. God will bring that back." And she said, "The only thing I know what to do is," she said, "I love children. I love working with children." So she became a teacher, and she and gave her life to getting kids, and she now is the principal of the school that she taught in. She went from just taking that stick to now not only is she teaching little children, but she's the principal of it, of that school. And she said, "I became principal because I let God use that stick. That was my way of saying, God, here I am. Use what I've got." And look how, and now it's been this for years. Look at the lives that have been changed, and the people that have been touched, and children that are going to grow up and go, "I remember a principal. I remember my teacher. I remember when this happened." And it started out just as a stick, but it went from a stick to the rod of God. And say, "Well, I don't have much to offer God. I've only got meal and a little oil. I really can't get out there and go to battle." God hasn't called me to be a missionary. I'm not called to go be a missionary. As a kid, because we used to have missionaries come to our church, and as they come to our church, I'd go, "I ain't going out there and eating worms." They tell about all the stuff. They ate crickets, they ate grasshoppers. And I'm going, "Woo, they're not for me." And so I decided I'll send them, So I give, "Hey, come to the mission field." "No, I'll send you." And but that's what God is asking us. If you can't go, you can send. You can stay with the stuff. Some of you, I mean this out of the bottom of my heart. Some of you have the sweetest smile. And you need to share that smile. And you need to give it out. Well, one of the things that I hear other people say, that when they're looking for a church, and that, "I'm not going to that church. They didn't smile. No one's smiling there. No one did that." And we really tried to work on, or we call them greeters, whatever name you want to give them. But people out there, touching people's lives and making them feel comfortable. If all you got is a smile, bring your smile to church. Someone needs it. I guarantee if you haven't smiled and someone smiles at you, we almost 99% of the time smile back. And if you offer a smile, you get one back. You say, well, that's not much. Well, if that's your rod, if that's your meal, if that's you staying with the stuff, then bring it to church and greet people with a smile. Some people are just dying for someone. You know what happens with a smile? A smile means that I've locked eyes with you, I see you, and I offer a smile. When anybody smiles at me, I don't go, oh, you smiled at me. I just feel inside I was recognized. That they saw me coming. I've never seen him before in my life. But they saw me coming. They smiled, and we walked by. I smiled at them. Sometimes people come to church, and they feel so lonely. They feel so empty. And, sometimes just a smile across the seat or across the aisle let somebody know that maybe feel like they're just empty and no one knows they exist. They feel so insignificant. And just a smile, and that smile says, hey, I see you sitting over in that seat, and, here, have a smile. I don't feel intimidated. I'm not trying to strike up a date or whatever. It's just, I recognize you. I know you're there. And so, just the small stuff. So I want to conclude today with what is our attitude about having small stuff. Well, you need to give it to God. Maybe you can't give every Sunday, but you could say, Pastor, I can help out in Sunday school once a month. Hey, we can use that. We'll train you. We need people to just be people. So many people today get lost in their own world, and I think one of the saddest things that can happen is to come into a church and no one greet you. I feel like sometimes, I don't feel like it, but I don't want church to ever become a doctor's office where everybody gathers in the gathering room and no one talks. Why are you here? Well, I'm sick. Well, I'm not. Well, now you are. No one talks to each other because if I talk to you, it'll, jump on you. It's kind of like people coming into church. Why are you at church? What sin do you have? What do you need forgiveness for? It's you're not checking out people in their sin. It's just, hey, we're here. We're a family. I'm glad to see you. I know some pastors that say, get here on time. I really do like you to get here early so we can greet and talk and have, a time of fellowship, stay late so we can talk more and have coffee. I don't drink that much coffee before service because I have to go to the bathroom during preaching. So I do most of my drinking coffee after service. And that's the truth with most pastors. They just don't tell you, oh, no, it's against my religion. No, it's not. You just don't want to pee during preaching. And but we need you to just come in and just start sharing your love and your concern about other people. You can take it. You can take your talent and hide it, but you never know when God's going to take it from your stick to the rod of God. You never know when you're going to give your last little portion of meal and God say, you're never going to go without because you gave it to me. You may not know, you may just feel like, oh, I'm just sitting around. I don't do that much. And yet God sees it completely the opposite. That He says you're going to get an equal reward. Because those that could go out went out knowing that the home front was safe. And so take what you have and offer it to God. Now, I told you the key was Ecclesiastes. It says, whatever you do, do it with all your might. So today, I want you to just, whatever it is you have, whatever God speaks to you to offer of God, to offer up to God, whatever your hands find to do, here's the key. Do it with everything you've got. Just come and smile. If that's all you got, smile till your cheeks ache. Smile till your neck sore and next my neck's sore. What did you do? I went to church. Well, what did you do at church? I smiled. Just get in there and do it. And I just use that because anyone can smile. But whatever your talent is, some of you are musically inclined. Get it off the tree. You know the Bible. You know what I'm talking about. And, because when you get to heaven and God said, what are you doing up here? How come you didn't use my talent? God, you don't want to be able to tell God, well, I was just getting ready to get it tuned. No, you get that sucker tuned and you get it to church. And we need you to stir up the gift. Don't have the attitude of, oh, it's not much. It won't make a difference. It will make a great difference. And just, all I'm doing is staying with the stuff. Not according to God. According to God, you're going to get the greatest reward. You'll get as great a reward with those that went out and did it because you provided them. And we do it financially. We do it always. And in any way can we do this. So this morning, as we close, keep Abigail in prayer. She does need your help and need your prayer. I want us to pray for our church when we should open. I'll close with this. Maybe I preached too long and some of you've tuned out already. Well, then you won't hear this and won't get upset. But I'm very concerned about some statements that have been made, about the church coming from the world's perspective. I told you 2 weeks ago, and I didn't hear it, but now not only have I heard it, but I've seen it, where the world classified the church as insignificant. That ought to scare the hell out of every church. And I mean get the hell out of our church so we can get heaven in here. When they call the church insignificant. They're taking down license plate numbers and turning them in. I know we're beating these cases in court, but the point is they're trying to shut us down. There's one set of people that are trying to get all the churches that are going via the airwave and via the internet, trying to shut them down so they can't get on the internet. It won't succeed, but they're still trying it. We just had a pharaoh from one of our states stand up and say, what happened to this state was not an act of God. We did it. That scares me when the leaders of our nation can stand up there and publicly declare this is not of God. We did it on our own. God did not help us. God helped the state where their leadership disannulled God and said God had no part in it. I'd be scared to death God would take me up on it and say, okay, I'm not going to be a part of it. If I was in that state, I'd begin to cry out to God right now and ask God for forgiveness, ask God to change our government, ask God to change our governor, because that man just shot at heaven and said God had no part in it. The church is insignificant. We need to rise up. I could get on a soapbox real easy. I'm talking to Joyce and just saying, when are we going to open up? I don't know if I want to wait for our governor or our mayor or somebody tell me when I can go to church. Right now, I'm trying to be cautious, but I am concerned, and I'm wanting to open this church up quickly. And, I know there may be some that, oh, don't open it up too quickly. Listen, the world's already shooting at us. It's time for all of us to wake up. They're already calling us and classifying us insignificant and declaring that because this virus is going away, God had nothing to do with it. Man, we're living in the time of Egypt, where Pharaoh said God had nothing to do with it. Well, that's my case anyway. 2 sermons for the price of 1. I love you. God bless you. And we'll see you Wednesday. I'll teach on Wednesday. Caleb be singing Tuesday and Thursday, and we're just having a good time. I love you. We need you to be faithful. You are in your giving through the internet and mailing it in, and some are even bringing it to church already. Love you. God bless you. So we'll see you later. All right. Instead of saying goodbye, get out of here, I'll say goodbye, turn it off.